Hello everybody. Today we're going to solve percent word problems. Now these problems will involve you solving for either a portion of your total amount of things, or actually figure out your percent. So we're going to use an equation, and the equation is going to be is equals of times percent. Okay? So just so you guys are aware, just so you understand what these means, because you can just plug in these values, but I want you to understand what it means. Is a portion of your amount. Okay, of is your total amount of things that you're working with, and then your percent, you know what that means. That's out of 100, right? A percent value. So that's what your is and of means. So if let's say I give you, 38%. Well, let me actually go back a second. So let's say I give you a fraction of, 4 out of 5 people stated that pizza is their favorite food, right? Well, the 4 would be the is, and the 5 would be the of, right? This is the portion of how many people like pizza, and 5 is your total amount. So this would be your is, and this would be your of. Now, if we divide 4 by 5, that we get, right, 0.80, and then times it by 100, we get 80%. So there's your percent. So we have your is 4, your of is 5, and there's your percent. So just so you understand what is and of mean, is a portion of your total, and of is your total amount. But we're going to use that equation there, okay? Now, when you're using the percent value, though, in this equation, the percent value itself for this equation, we're actually going to use the decimal form of the percent, okay? So I'll show you what I mean right now. Let's look at an example. So for our first example, 88 is what percent of 140? Well, I'm going to use the equation we talked about at the beginning. So is equals of times percent. So that's the equation we're going to plug into. We're going to find those three things. So it says 88 is what percent of 140? So we're finding the percent. We're looking for the percent. So I'm going to let that be X. We don't know it. The 88, that's your is. That's the portion of your total. And it says of 140. That's your of, or your total amount. Okay, so if you need to, you can label them next to it. And now just plug those values in. So 88 equals, remember the of is 140, and we didn't know the percent, that's X. Okay? So in order to solve this equation, and now you're just basically solving, guys, when you plug the values into this formula, you're solving the one-step equation. So you divide both sides by 140, and you're going to use your calculator for that. So you divide 88 by 140, you get 0.62875, or 857, excuse me. But now, if you think about it, we are finding the percent. And remember, when we use this formula, this value is actually a decimal. So what we want to do for our final answer is times it by 100, and then we can round that answer to the nearest hundredth. So if you take this in your calculator, multiply it by 100, which is basically just moving the decimal 2 places to the right, you get 62.86 if we round to the nearest hundredth percent. Okay, so scar, percent. Keeps doing that because it's really close to the next screen. Sorry for that. So 62.86%. Now, that's how you do it using the formula. For this particular question, if you have a really good understanding at this point, you could actually just, and I want to be careful showing you this, but I will. You could actually just divide 88 by 140 and then take your answer and multiply it by 100, because if you have a good understanding of percents. All right. But let's look at another example. So our second example is 44% of 50 is what? Okay. So let's go through and label in our problem what we're given. Well, we're given 44%. Now, anytime you see the percent symbol, that's your percent. Now, when we're using this equation, though, this value in the equation is a decimal. So you actually want to make that percent a decimal. So right above it, I'll write what that decimal is. It's 0.44, right? Divided by 100. Okay, so 0.44. That's the value you're actually going to plug in a second. And then of 150. So your total is 150, or your of, okay, is what? We don't know the portion, or we're looking for the portion, so that's going to be our X. So when you're doing these word problems, label your variable. So now you're just going to plug this in to that formula below. So remember, our is X, our of is 50, and our percent, remember we're using the decimal in this formula, is 0.44. Now, really, there's no solving for this formula because these are being multiplied together. So just type that in your calculator. So when you enter that in your calculator, 50 times 0.44, you get 22. You don't even have to round that one, okay? There you go. All right. That should make sense because if you think of 50 being your total, well, about half of 50 is 25. So 44% of 50 would be about 22. That seems to make sense. That's how you do it, though, guys. It's that simple. So, again, identify your is, your of, and your percent. Whatever you don't know out of those three, let it be X. Your percent will always have the percent symbol after it, unless it says what percent that you're trying to find it. And you plug them in and solve. So let's do one more example. So for our last example, we have 9 is 20% of what number? Remember, for these problems, we're using the formula is equals of times percent. Before we start there, I just want to mention that if you don't like this method of doing it, and you want to research a different method on your own, because there's different ways of doing things in mathematics. There's a reason why I teach you guys this method. But if you want another way of doing it, there's actually another way using proportions. So if you see another way using proportions, that would be the other major way you can do many of these problems. But let's get back into it. So let's read it first carefully. It says 9 is 20% of what number? I like to identify the percent first, and you see it here, 20%, because we know that's our percent. It has a percent symbol. But remember, when we're using this formula, we need that percent as a decimal, okay? So make that to a decimal, which would be 0.2 or 0.20, however you want to look at it, okay? So that's our percent value we're going to use, the decimal form of it. And then actually also helps separate our problem a little bit. 9 is. Well, 9 is our part of the total. And we're actually looking for the total of what number? So that's X, of is X. So now let's plug them in. 9, right? 9 is, so 9 goes right there. Of, we don't know it, X, and then the percent is 0.2. But since they're being multiplied together, I'm just going to switch the order there, right? Because we typically put the coefficient in front of the variable. So that was actually our percent value as a decimal, and the of was X, okay? And now you solve that one-step equation. Well, to solve it, it's 0.2x. We divide both sides by 0.2. And if you're good at math, by the way, or really, really good at numbers, you might have known this answer before you even did it. But divide that using your calculator. So when you divide 9 by 0.2, just so you can see the decimal, using your calculator, you get 45. And that is right, okay? That says 9 is 20% of what number? 20% is about a fifth, right? So that's going to be times by 5 to get 100%. So 45 is your final answer for that one, all right? And again, some students start to memorize the three different situations. I think it's best for you guys, to be honest, if you plug everything into this equation and then you simply solve the one-step equation, all right? But I think one of the key things, just so I kind of cover this with you guys, some of the key mistakes I've seen from students is always make your percent a decimal. So the decimal value, the percent actually goes right there, okay? Not the actual percent value itself. Sometimes the students forget that. And sometimes students, again, try to memorize the three situations. I would recommend that you just plug them into the equation and then solve your simple one-step equation, because you guys are good at solving one-step equations and equations at this point, okay? So now let's do two problems that you're going to do to wrap things up. Okay, so here's your two problems. So try these on your own using the equation is equals of times percent. So at this point, pause the video, try these on your own, and then once you finish them and you try them on your own, restart the video to truly see how you did, because if you got both of these right, you definitely know what's going on. So the next 15 seconds will be blank. Okay, so hopefully you tried those on your own. So number one, 64% of 20 is what number? First thing you want to do after you write down your equation you're going to use is go through and label your things. So you have 64%. We're going to make that a decimal. We're always using the decimal number for this formula. 0.64, right? Divided by 100. Of 20, that's your of or your total, is what number? So we're looking for the portion here. So is X, okay? So X equals 20 times your percent value, 0.64. Now, you guys should see it says of 20. So your answer, if of is your total, it has to be less than 20, right? So and you can kind of self-check these. So using your calculator, take 20 and multiply it by 0.64 and round it to the nearest hundredth if you need to, but this one actually stops at the tenths place. It's going to be 12.8. Okay, so number 1 is 12.8. Let's look at number 2. 94, that's not a decimal there, just a random dot. 94 is what percent of 60? Now, if you're really, really good with percents and good at mathematics, you might actually see something in this problem. I don't know if you see it right now, and I'll actually tell you right now. It says 94 is what percent of 60? Well, see how the is number is bigger than the of number? That means this percent's going to be larger than 100. For most percents, I shouldn't say most, but most, yeah, I guess that probably is the best way to say it. Oftentimes, the is value is smaller than the of because the of is your total. But for this particular problem, we're actually going to get a percent greater than 100 because the is greater than the of. But let's set it up. So it says 94 is, I kind of already did it for you, right? That's your is value. What percent? So we're actually looking for the percent. That's going to be x of 60. So of is 60. So now let's plug those in to the equation. So is equals of times percent. Remember, 94 is our is. The of is 60, and our percent we don't know. That's x. And now we simply solve that one-step equation. Divide both sides by 60. But remember, you actually found the decimal right there, okay? So when we're using this equation here, this value that you find is the decimal, or you use the decimal when you use the equation, right? So using your calculator, divide 94 by 60. And I got 1.566 repeating, okay? So because we have to make that a percent, that's a decimal, times by 100, and then you could round that to the nearest hundredths place. When you multiply that by 100, you get 156.67 if you round it to nearest hundredth percent. Okay? So that's how you do these. So if you got both of those right, you're probably going to be in great shape. All right? So thank you very much for your attention. Hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. Again, the other way to solve percent word problems is involving proportions. So, but there's plenty of resources online on this, either using this equation or using proportions. Hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. If you have any questions at all, please send me an email or research the topic on your own. Have a fantastic day, everybody.